Hello and welcome back to another episode of Not Your Average Housewife. I'm your host Mel, and today I have such an amazing guest with me, and I know I say this about every single person I have on here, but I am so super excited to introduce to you who I have today. So this lady is changing the world for survivors, one woman at a time. She's just absolutely amazing, and after seeing her interview and speak to so many other women, I am so excited and proud to be on the reverse side and hear her story. So thank you so much, Leila, for coming today and meeting with me.
First of all, what an intro. Thank you.
It's true.
It's true. Really flattered. Thank you.
It's true.
So hi everyone. I'm Leila Dauti. I'm the founder of a female survivor movement called Leila, Please Tell My Story. Mm-hmm. I create survivor-led spaces, programs, campaigns, and that center survivors' real lived experiences. And I tackle gender-based violence head on pretty much. Some of the parts of my work that are the most exciting to me are supporting women in their recovery journey. But in particular, being there actually when they realise that life after leaving a perpetrator is not just possible, but it's actually beautiful. But essentially, when I take off all of my professional hats and I start spinning all the fucking plates, I'm Leila Dauti and I'm a survivor of domestic abuse.
Amazing. So with the Leila, Please Tell My Story, am I correct in thinking that was your birth?
Yes.
That was how everything started. Yeah. So how did that come about?
It pretty much was born of my own lived experience. So I was in a relationship with a perpetrator for 8.5 years. So pretty much like the best, all of my 20s pretty much.
Yeah.
And after I left him, and, you know, like you have all the crisis service and victim services, like they do that initial part of keeping you safe, right?
Yeah.
And then you become low risk, and I use that very loosely, that term. And they kind of close their doors on you, and then you're kind of just thrown out into the world. And when that happened to me, I was a bit like, what the fuck do I do now?
Yeah.
There was, no matter how far and wide and high and low, I was searching for some kind of community of other survivors, of other women to connect with and, you know, to talk about this. I was processing all of this trauma. No matter where I looked, it just wasn't there. And it wasn't even that like it was lacking in quality, any kind of survivor community, but it just didn't exist anywhere. And I actually left in October 2019. And then, well, we all know what happened in March 2020.
Yep.
We were all just thrown into lockdown, weren't we? And so for me, it was like I'd left this perpetrator and left this huge form of oppression. And then we were all stuck in our homes, and it was like another form of oppression.
So were you by yourself then?
Yeah. At that point, I was by myself. Yeah, I was by myself with my daughter. And depression and anxiety just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I just remember thinking I felt so alone, like so lonely and so low. And no matter who I spoke to in my life at the time, because I had a really good support network, and I know not every woman has that, and it's really sad. I had a really, really good support network, and everyone was really rooting for me. But I didn't have anyone else in my life who I could relate to.
Yeah.
And even if I did have maybe friends who had been through domestic abuse, they weren't so open and forthcoming to talk about it. They just wanted to forget about it as if it never happened, because we don't talk about domestic abuse because there's so much shame and taboo and stigma attached to it. And it was September 2020. We're still in lockdown at this time. And I just remember thinking, you know what, fuck it. Like, if you can't see the change, be the change, right? And I've always had that about me. I don't give a shit what anyone says, so I'm just going to go for it. And I started talking to like some friends, and I was like, I just feel like I need something. Like, I'm desperate. I need to find something, someone. And I was talking to a friend one day, and she started sharing with me her story of what her family went through. And I was like, oh my God, like the story needs to be told, like it needs to get out there. So she said, she was like, well, you're so good on camera, right? You're so good at talking. You're really good at sharing stories. Because that's what I used to do before I actually started the whole storytelling series. I used to actually get on my Instagram because we were all so depressed and lonely,
Yeah.
I'd get on my Instagram stories and I'd share other people's dating stories.
Yeah. Oh, you did dating stories
Yeah,
first?
but just on my stories. I didn't actually make videos.
Okay.
So it was literally just my family and friends. I
So
had
did you have people send you in stuff?
Yeah, like
it
was my family and friends. I had like 400 followers.
Yeah.
And they would send me their funny dating stories. And then I realized really quickly, I was like, okay, these were funny and relatable, but actually what was the relatable part of it was the toxicity. And I remember thinking, this isn't funny anymore.
Yeah.
There's a lot here, like so many women are missing out on red flags because we listen to these dating stories and we're finding so much relation in the toxicity that we then just laugh it off. Again, because it's such a taboo thing to talk about. So we just make it out to be this really funny story. And I was talking to my friends about this anyway. My friend was like, well, what about my sister's story? And we sat down and she timelined the whole thing about how her sister was with her partner growing up. She was really young. He was perpetrator. You'll all have to go onto my Instagram. It's called My Sister Was Killed by Her Boyfriend. And I sat down in front of the camera, literally me and my iPhone 11 camera. This is like 5 years ago now. And I sat in front of the camera and I just filmed myself telling this story. I'd articulated the story with all the facts that she'd given me. I posted it on Insta and I was like, no one's going to listen to this. This was like a 7-minute long and we know what people's attention span is on social media. I was like, no one's going to listen to this, but it doesn't matter. Even if it's just one woman, let me just get the story out there. And I put it on Insta, posted it, didn't think anything of it, left it. I remember actually saying to my friends at the time, I was like, nothing's going to come of this, but it's okay. It doesn't matter.
If one person hears it and if it helps one woman, then...
Exactly. So I posted it on Instagram and then like within a couple of hours, it had like 10,000 views. Then it was at 20,000 views. And then the next day it was at like 250,000. And then it was like 500,000, 1 million, 2 million. And then like all these celebrities were posting it everywhere. And quite literally within a week, this whole survivor community was born.
Yeah.
I get really emotional about it.
I've got goosebumps of you telling me that.
I get really emotional about it because it was as if like the universe had heard all of that desperation in me and was like, this is what we're giving, not you, but all of these women who are also desperate. And, you know, the videos going viral at the time and this huge survivor community forming was just indicative of how desperately the space was needed for women. And even the tagline, Leila, please tell my story. Like, I didn't come up with that. That was born off the back of women messaging me like, Leila, please tell my story. Please, I heard the way you told this other woman's story. Please, can you tell my story in that way? And that's how the whole movement was born. And it was like one video after another. And at first, it started out just being anonymous because the women didn't want to come forward and share it publicly. They were too afraid of the judgment, of the shame. I think as a survivor, anyone who's a survivor would probably, they know what that feels like. So much misunderstanding of what it's like to be a victim of domestic abuse or any forms of gender-based violence and abuse. And really quickly, so it started off in like just small waves and it started building into tidal. And before I knew it, became this whole like tsunami movement. And the women were coming forward and saying, I don't want to be anonymous anymore. Like, that's it. I don't want to be this blacked out figure that's portrayed on TV on these domestic abuse campaigns where like our identities are completely stripped. Or if you see like domestic abuse campaigns where the woman's in the corner cowering with her hands over her face, the women in the survivor community were not seeing themselves represented in that. And a lot of the times what the women were saying was that I didn't know I was a victim because that's how victims are portrayed. And that's not who I was. I wasn't this timid wallflower of a woman cowering in the corner. I was successful. I was financially stable. I was educated. I'd had a degree, you know, like I was a feminist. I was all of these things. And yet I was still a victim. Yeah.
And a lot of people get confused with that, I think. They think that perpetrators will only prey on women who are at their lowest when actually they don't have anything to take from them. And in my personal experience and things that I've heard, and I'm sure you'll agree, it's actually the flip side of that probably gets more than, is that making sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. At the end of the day, it's like anybody can be a victim. Yeah. Anybody, but if we're talking about in terms of violence towards women and girls, it is women who are disproportionately at risk of violence and abuse. And you're right, it doesn't matter whether you are a career-driven woman, whether you, and I was. I had a career in civil engineering. I was the main breadwinner. I've always been a feminist. That's always been innate in me. And I've always been confident and outspoken. And because I was those things, I never thought that would happen to me. And I never saw myself as a victim until quite like towards the end of my relationship. But so many thousands of women were coming forward and sharing this similarly lived experience of saying, I didn't think I was a victim. I didn't know that this was happening to me, because it's not what we're taught in the media, in domestic abuse campaigns. Like, I think we have this misinterpretation that domestic abuse is like Trevor and Mo from EastEnders, when he would just come home from the pub drunk and just slap her around the face, right? Because of the way it's been portrayed in what do they call them? What is in EastEnders?
Like soaps?
Soaps, that's it,
And do you think that I mean, I might be heading a little bit conspiracy theory here, but do you think that is deliberate in some ways?
I don't know if it's deliberate. I think it's just down to a huge lack of education and understanding and awareness of the everydayness of domestic abuse, of the actual power and control cycle and the patterns of perpetrator behaviour. And so to go back to how all the work has evolved. So I had this anonymous storytelling series, and honestly, that started in October, was the first time I posted. My sister was killed by her boyfriend. And by June the next year, the women were like, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to be anonymous anymore.
Yeah.
So I created a campaign called The Survivors Who Broke Their Silence. And again, actually a part of that was based off my own experience, what I was going through, trying to get my own story out there. So a major production company approached me within that time. So between October, I think it was like March 2021, something like that, I was approached by a huge broadcaster. And they were like, we're doing this documentary about domestic abuse. Will you be a part of it? I was like, oh my God, yeah, I was so hungry to like share with the world that this whole community existed and that so women could find it. And it became a lifeline for so many women. Anyway, I spent months and months and months talking to them, giving them all this lived experience knowledge, sharing, like pretty much pouring my heart out to them and like educating them. And it was like a couple of days before we were supposed to start filming. I called the producers and I'm like, I don't have a schedule, like what's going on? Yeah. And the producer like, actually we've spoken to the lawyers, and because you don't have a conviction against the perpetrator, we can't actually film with you. And I was like, are you fucking kidding me? It hadn't even dawned on me that was a thing. Yeah. It hadn't even dawned on me that this was a huge barrier for survivors everywhere, that the newspapers, that broadcasters, documentaries won't even pick up stories if there isn't a conviction.
Yeah, no, they won't.
Perpetrators most likely never get convicted or reported for domestic abuse.
So where do women share?
So where do women go to share their stories in a really safe environment? And coupled with the women coming forward and saying, Leila, look, I don't want to be anonymous anymore. And that was the birth of the Survivors Who Broke Their Silence. In fact, I remember sitting down with a friend, I was crying. I was like, I can't believe they've done this. For months, I was having all these conversations with them, all of these meetings. And now for them to just be like, oh yeah, by the way, we're not using you. It felt really invalidating to me. And I remember thinking, I don't want any other woman to ever feel this way. And she was like, you're an idiot. You've created your whole community. You do it.
Do your own.
Yeah, she was like, you do it. She was like, why are you waiting for these other producers and broadcasters? She's like, you do it. You've got the power to do this. And then it was like, duh, light bulb, obviously. In fact, God, I'm going like on all these different directions now because all of it adds up to where I am today. I'd actually introduced, and this was part of something that I had to forgive myself for. I'd actually introduced the producers to a group of survivors who they needed, essentially. The producers needed these survivors to make this documentary. It wasn't going to be a documentary without us. And some of the survivors who did have convictions, they could have done the documentary.
And did they go and do it?
No.
Oh, good.
They all pulled out. And I still get emotional about that. And I remember saying to the girls, I was like, go for it, because we'd created this group chat and I was like, girls, go for it. Like, it doesn't matter what they've done to me. What matters is that your stories are out there and it creates this kind of awareness, right? It doesn't matter. And they were like, absolutely fucking not. I'm not doing it. And they all pulled out. They pulled out all of their consent forms 2 days before filming.
So did this program go ahead?
Yes, it did. Yeah.
You'll have to tell me afterwards.
Yeah, I'm not. I've learned a lot in the industry and in the sector. So yeah, I will tell you privately. But it did go ahead, but it didn't have the impact that it could have had and should have had with the survivors' lived experiences. And that led to the birth of the survivors who broke their silence, essentially. So whilst it was a really triggering and invalidating experience, what it gave birth to was a movement that can't be replicated by anyone else. And that is something I'll forever be proud of. And the women who pulled out were then on the first series.
Oh, were they?
Yeah, it was us as a group. And they were like...
It's on YouTube, isn't it?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. It's all over social media, but all the full campaign series, they're all on my YouTube, which is Leila, Please Tell My Story. And you'll find all of the stories there. And yes, the 5 of us just got on camera and we were just talking about it. Back then, I wasn't even talking with my professional hat on. I hadn't even qualified in the sector for any kind of work yet. It was just our raw feelings, our raw thoughts, our own stories, and how we felt the system had failed us, essentially, and how society was failing us as women, as mums, as, you know, as survivors. So that's just snowballed now to 5 years later, where I've produced 4 campaign series, and hopefully next year we get to do another one. We're putting it out there. We're manifesting another one, because essentially this isn't just a storytelling series. This isn't just about sharing stories. This is a lifeline for other women. It's a lifeline for women who are finding the community and the movement, and they're finally seeing themselves represented, and they can finally relate to stories about how social services let them down, how the police let them down, family courts, criminal courts, civil courts, CAFCAS, everything, the whole system, even some victim services. You know?
I feel like that, I feel like that is what is not shared enough. Like, we all know what a perpetrator is. We all know what a male perpetrator is. He's a bully. He is a nobody. We all know he's somebody that abuses women and children and is a coward. We know that. We all know that. I feel like what people don't know enough about is the lack. I mean, your perpetrator's never going to help you. We know that. But the services that are there to protect you and they don't, I feel like that's not spoken about
they often,
enough.
And I'm honestly yet to meet more than 5 or 10 women who will say, I had a great experience with services.
They did everything that they should have done.
They did everything. Do you know how rare it is for me to come across a survivor that will say, yes, social services helped, CAFCAS helped, the family courts were great.
Yeah, I know.
And a lot of us really can sit there and say, from my own lived experience, they were horrific. They let me down. They put me and my children at further risk.
You almost feel like they're conspiring against behind
it feels
your back.
like that.
It's that unreal that you think do they have like private laws that we don't know about? Like, how can this be going on?
It's a systemic issue, essentially, that the law and the system doesn't work for women. It absolutely doesn't. Even when we go through family courts and we look at custody and who's more likely to get access to the children, there's this huge misconception that fathers never get access to the children. And that is a complete lie. That's not true whatsoever. I've seen it as an IDVA. I've witnessed it front line where fathers who are perpetrators of domestic abuse have been given unlimited access to the children, even in cases where there's been sexual abuse to the mum, to the children themselves, to where there's been like actual physical harm, where there's been psychological violence to them as a family as a whole. But it doesn't even need to be direct to the children.
Because he's their
dad. Absolutely. And it's like the need to be their father in the system top trumps the need to keep the children and the mothers safe. So there's this huge misconception around that, which is a topic that we probably even don't have time for today. But I speak from professional experience and I know because I see it every single day in my profession. But essentially the system doesn't work in favor for women and for victims of domestic abuse. So most recently they are now going to remove the presumption of contact if if families do end up going to family court and there's a parent who is a perpetrator. At the moment, if you do go to family court, there's an immediate presumption that both parents will have access to the children. They've got rights, they've got parental rights. Now, hopefully, I will believe it when I see it. I will believe it when this actually becomes a law and people, the system, the family courts and CAFCAS and social services are actually putting it into action. But it is hopeful. There's hope, but we'll believe it when we see it.
Can I ask, being somebody who does this for a living now, who works in this line of work and also being somebody who has lived it and come through the other end, how do you feel and how do you cope when you have to deal with that at work? When you see, say, cases that you work with and a dad who is a perpetrator, who does have a history of violence towards even the mum and child themselves, and they are granted access.
Yeah.
How do you cope with hearing that?
It's actually, I haven't coped the best in the past, if I'm completely honest. It's one of the reasons why I'm leaving the sector completely. It's very triggering work.
Yeah.
And nobody can prepare you for how triggering it can be, because you realize that this is a systemic issue. Like, I've supported women where the perpetrator has removed the children from her care, and because there's no child arrangement, there's nothing through the courts, and because he's got parental rights, there's nothing anyone can do about it, even though it's a deliberate act of perpetration. There's nothing the system can do because he's got parental rights, right? I mean, I've argued with social workers, with police officers. I actually had an argument on the phone once with a police officer who was in the child abuse department. I don't know all the technical terms, but who was leading up one of the child abuse departments. And it was a case where the perpetrator had taken the kids away out of the home deliberately as an act of abuse to the mum. And I was saying to her, like, this is unsafe. This is unsafe. You need to go and find these children. These children need to be back home with their mum. He's a perpetrator. I'm explaining this whole thing to them, this whole case history. Yeah. And she said, well, and they were roaming the streets, by the way. I can't share too much because for people's privacy. But, and I was like, how is this even safe? They should be at home, you know? And she was like, well, he's not doing anything illegal. He's their dad. He's got parental rights. He's not doing anything illegal, even though it's a clear, deliberate act of harmful behaviour.
But yeah, it turns, if that dad was to then go to court and get something, even if it's a lie, against the mum, it then becomes illegal for that mum to go and try and take her children back.
Absolutely. And it will be the women that are penalised. I realised I didn't even actually answer your question about how it's affected me. So it has affected me mental health wise. It has affected me greatly. Like, there are some cases that I will never forget. There are cases where I've supported mothers and through their children self-harming, attempting suicide because they're just so desperate to escape the father's abusive behaviour. And it's relentless work. I think on my end as an IDVA, so the hardest bit has been for me is accepting that whilst I'm really good at my job and I am the right person to be supporting these women frontline, the job isn't right for me anymore. It's damaging for my mental health. It's damaging for my own recovery because as survivors, we're constantly in recovery, and it's just become too much for me to continue practicing in the sector. So after my time in the sector, I am completely stepping away from frontline. It's just not the right job for me. And that's been really hard. Like, I've cried a lot over it actually, because I came into this line of work thinking, I understand victims, I understand survivors, you know, I know what they need. I know how I can support them, to them being like, oh my God, this knocked me like a ton of bricks, because I didn't think it would have this huge detrimental effect on me emotionally. And accepting that has been actually the toughest part of my work. I actually started shadowing perpetrator work. So a lot of work in the sector is about trying to have a holistic approach to changing harmful behaviour in perpetrators. And I started realising that the root cause was actually, getting closer to the root cause was actually being in the room with perpetrators and educating them on how to change their behaviour. When I had that realisation, when I was shadowing perpetrator work, I was like, I'm out, because this is not the right line of work for me whatsoever.
Do you think they can change?
Personally, me, no. I don't.
I agree.
I think once a perpetrator, once a perpetrator, always a perpetrator. However, in order to have a holistic and systemic and societal approach to change, these programs exist. perpetrators only change if they want to change. You have to be willing to
and a lot of
change.
the men that are on these courses are there because it's part of their bail conditions.
Yeah, bail conditions. It could be part of family court conditions as well to see the children. This maybe they're with social services about to lose their children.
They're not there.
There's not a lot of motivation for them personally. So the motivation comes from because the system's told them to do it. My personal beliefs are that I don't think they can change. Professionally, I see it from a different view because there has to be an approach to change this behaviour. So I do have two different views on it, but my personal opinion, no.
Did you find, I'm guessing in the role that you're doing now or were doing, did you do quite a lot of work with survivors in the aftermath of
No, so
of
a lot
leaving,
of...
or have you done previously?
So a lot of the work frontline is just supporting victims. That is just, it is, as I said, relentless. It's raw. It's just on a daily basis supporting victims in crisis. My work with survivors started long before I started working with victims. And like I've been doing survivor work now for 5 years, and just because I say survivor work, because I always think everyone just knows what I'm thinking in my head, right? Everyone's telepathic, but really what I'm talking about is recovery work. To go back a little bit, off the back of when I created the survivors who broke their silence, and the women were coming forward and sharing their stories, the main theme, one of the main themes was there was no recovery work. No matter how many times these women were sharing their stories and talking to therapists, talking to practitioners, talking to professionals, there was still this sense of, I'm not recovering. I'm living constantly in this fight or flight, in the survival mode. And so even though the campaign itself is great and it's had a huge impact, it's had this really incredible impact, right? It's not enough. I realize that survivors need real, relatable recovery. They need specific, specialized work. And I remember going into filming once because we were doing a big production day. And I just remember sitting there thinking, how good would it be if after this we could all just go to a spa? Like, how good would that be? Like, just to like stress relief and decompress from sharing all of our stories. And then I was like, hang on a minute, I'm onto something. It was like, I hadn't figured it all out then, but it was like just this tiny little seed. And I just thought, I'm onto something. So let me just explore this. Let me sit with this. Let me see how this feels. So I then started researching a lot of recovery work. So I started researching addiction recovery. I started researching cult recovery as well. Like in America, cults are such a huge problem that they have specialized recovery programs for ex-cult members. And I started researching
I'm not a cult member, by the way.
Oh yeah, I didn't realise.
Well, maybe part of my own cult.
The irony. So I started researching. I was like, what are these people doing? What are they doing to help in recovery for those who need it desperately? And when I was researching all these cults and the different forms of abuse that these cult leaders were using to groom their victims, I was like, hang on a minute, that's what my ex-husband did. Hang on a minute, that's what I went through. Hang on a minute. It was this whole grooming period that a lot of us as victims, we don't even realize it's we call it love bombing.
Love bombing,
yeah, we call it love bombing. I hate to break it to you, but it's actually a grooming cycle. And so I was researching. I was researching, what are these centers doing in America to help these victims, these survivors? What are we doing over here in the UK to help addicts in recovery? Like, how are we supporting these people who have ended up in these traumatic life states? And then the next question was, why the fuck are we not doing this for survivors of domestic abuse? Why the fuck are we not helping women recover? Because this isn't just...
Like, there's rehab for everything else.
Yeah. And it's such a cycle because a woman can come out the other end and everybody encourages her to leave. Everyone was like, leave. And then you leave and there's fuck all there for you to help you process the trauma and the depression, all of the mental health issues that come with it, the post-traumatic stress. And I was looking at recovery work, right, particularly with addicts. And I started to realize, I've got friends who work for TFL, that if you present to management that you are struggling with addiction, they help you with recovery work. They help you go to recovery centers and all of that, right? And I was just like, Dad, why is all this help available and it can be accessible for other people, but it's not for female survivors of domestic abuse?
They just tell you to leave.
Because they tell you to leave and then there's no support for you. And then we turn to other self-soothing ways. So
that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, addiction is something that I'm so passionate about, just like breaking this topic open and discussing it, because so many women, and just to preface that anybody can be a victim of domestic abuse, but the reality is that women are disproportionately affected by it. So many women are ending up without the right support, with no access to therapy, with no access to community support, with no access to peer group, no access to any form of recovery. And they sometimes feel like there's nowhere else to turn to but alcohol, but drugs, but gambling, but anything can become an addiction. Yeah. Absolutely anything, because it's not the substance itself. It's the self-soothing it makes you feel, because you're like, for those moments, hours, or however the high is, you don't have to deal with the trauma.
Exactly. One of my guests last month said to me, and it just hit home, and it just screams truth. And he was like, alcohol was never my problem. It was my solution.
Yes.
And I was like, oh my God, as a recovering alcoholic myself, like, how have I never heard that before? And it's so true. Drugs are not your problem. Gambling is not your problem. Sex addiction is not your problem. And I know that a lot of women go down the route of sex work as well.
But my point is that anything becomes a solution.
It's your solution. Your problem is not the crutch that you're using. That's what you're using because of the problem, because there is nothing else there. Yeah,
there's nothing. And what do we expect women to do? Where we just throw them back out into the community? A lot of those women have maybe been victims of financial abuse, of economical abuse. There are survivors out there who weren't allowed to turn their washing machines on, who weren't allowed to wash their dishes with hot water. And then maybe they didn't even know how to pay a bill. They didn't even know how to pay a bill because he had all control of the finances and made it feel like he was doing you a favor, right? Oh, I'm in control of all the money. You don't have to worry about it. And actually, that's a huge economical control tactic that a lot of perpetrators use. And then we throw the women out into the world. They've left. And then now they're like, well, when am I allowed to use a washing machine? Am I allowed to use the hot water? How do I pay a bill? All of these life skills that so many victims were stripped of. They're stripped of that autonomy. And now they have to relearn how to live life again.
Yeah, as a grown woman.
Yeah, and this is... I use this term of learning to live with freedom we'll get to there, in my recovery program, because even I found myself, like I was now free and I had all of this freedom, and I was like, I don't know what to do with it all. I don't know what to do with it all. And there was no structured way of helping me understand what was to come next or preparing me for what was to come next. And that's where a lot of women then get stuck in the cycle of addiction, get stuck in the cycle of self-soothing through any forms of substances.
And in your experience, either from working with other people or your own lived experience, do you think that alcohol and or drug misuse plays a big part in perpetrators' lives as well?
It can do, but when we do, when these are issues that are a part of perpetrators' lives, we are very, very clear to the fact that they're not perpetrating because of drugs and alcohol.
No.
It may give them the confidence to do it. It's an added factor.
But that's in them already.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, domestic abuse is a choice, no matter how you look at it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, like no matter how you look at it.
And it makes me angry when someone says it's not. It is a choice.
It absolutely is a choice, yeah.
You would not go and hit a man twice your size. Yeah, because you choose not to, because you know hit you back. You've chosen to hit that woman.
Well, here's the thing, right? And I say this to my clients all the time, and actually even to my friends in my real life, we have these discussions. Does he go to work and slap his boss around the face because his boss pissed him off?
Of course not.
When he's in the street and someone pissed him off, does he do that in the street? Does he just... No, of course not. So what has he done in that moment? He's chosen to control...
himself.
Yeah,
right? There is no lack of self-control there.
Exactly. There is absolutely zero lack of self-control, that this behaviour is a choice and that at any point it can stop.
Yeah.
And so I'm very, very clear. And I know that on social media, we have these buzzwords and terms like narcissistic abuse or, so many different forms of abuse, and they become buzzwords with very little understanding behind them. So even if we look at the term narcissistic abuse, it's still removing some kind of accountability from the perpetrator. I completely understand that a lot of victims feel seen in that term, and that is so valid. It's so valid. But the reality is they're not abusing because they're a narcissist. They're abusing because they're a perpetrator.
Because they chose to.
Yeah, they've chosen to. And actually, when we use these big buzz terms, these big buzzwords, we're actually minimizing the risk that women are under. So it's not to invalidate anyone. It's to actually show them that actually it's a huge, huge risk just by reducing it to these titles that we're using on social media. Yeah, because then
it kind of gives them the warrant that, okay, well, they were born this way.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's not their fault. It's the personality trait. It's their mental health. Like I wouldn't go around and say, he had ADHD. That's why he did it.
Yeah.
They're not reasons. He was an alcoholic. That's why he did. They're not reasons why people choose to abuse.
Did it because he's a prick?
Yes, he did it because he's a prick. They're added factors, but they're not the reason why. And we have to be really clear about this when we're having these conversations, because anything else is doing a disservice to victims and survivors, because then women get stuck in the cycle of, he's got poor mental health. I can help him change. I can wait. I can hang around until he changes this behavior. The reality is there is nothing you can do. There is nothing. You cannot force someone to change if they don't want to. What you can do is get yourself to a life state where you are safe and free away from this control and abuse that you are suffering with. But there's nothing you can do to force someone to change.
No, absolutely not. Not at all. And going back to your Leila, please tell my story. That is actually how my own little business has started. So
is it really?
It is. That
my God, I had no idea.
That's how Purple Disco that I run, that's how that started.
I thought it was because you want to be a DJ and you love DJing.
I wasn't a DJ then.
Oh my God.
I'm interested in DJing. I just randomly bought a pair of decks after that event. So I remember you set up a campaign. I can't for the life of me remember what it was called now. It was for survivors and their children to access therapy. Was it called Access to Therapy?
Yeah, at the time I didn't have a title. I just called it a recovery program. But yes, the first step was to access therapy. Yeah.
And I remember you were trying to raise funds to get that off the ground. And I wanted to put a fundraiser on in Milton Keynes. And I was like, I really want to help my friend raise some money for this thing. Like, she's doing such amazing work. We need to all raise some money for her. And then my now friend, he wasn't my friend at the time, approached me. He's now my business partner in Purple Disco. Yeah. So I got a random Facebook message because I come and spoke at your event. Yeah. Do you remember? And I put on sort of something similar in Milton Keynes after, and then the paper covered a story on it. And he contacted me off the back end of that and said, I used to run like a club night years and years ago with another girl. We used to raise money for domestic abuse survivors in Northampton, which is like the next town to here. And he was like, I've seen what you're doing. And if you ever want to do something similar, like I'd be really open to doing something together. So I was like, do you know what? I love a little night out. I do. I was like, yes.
We all do.
Yeah, let's have a little night out while raising money for a great cause. I mean, it's win-win. So we kind of put our heads together, and that's how it was it was only supposed to be a one-off event. That's all it was supposed to be. It didn't really even have a name. I was listening to a remix of something in my car by Purple Disco Machine, and I just thought, purple's like the colour for like domestic abuse awareness. And I thought, Purple Disco. So I thought, we'll just call the event that, so it's got a name. And then the money we raised from that event went to the Access to Therapy campaign for Leila, Please Tell My Story. And so many people were taken back by that event and the fact that we didn't make no money from it. We just gave it all, we gave it all to a cause that absolutely deserved it. And everyone was like, when's the next one? When's the next one? I was like, there's not. It's a one-off. Anyway, we're 8 events deep now.
There you go. Look, you created a whole movement. That's amazing.
And it was literally completely accidental.
Yeah.
It was, I'm not going to say never supposed to happen, because of course it was supposed to happen. And then after that event, I ordered myself some decks.
And now look at you.
Now I'm DJing all over the place.
I love it. When you do what you love and what you're supposed to do.
It just comes to you.
It's natural, isn't it? It's absolutely natural. And you're right. You did raise that. And shortly after that as well, we were awarded, I say we, it's just me, by the way, like it's just me, my tiny little CIC, because I'm set up as a non-profit, but hopefully we're putting it out there. We're going to manifest that we're going to grow into a full-blown organization with a team to be able to do this. I was also awarded an extra bit of funding in September last year, and I started piloting the recovery program. Yeah. So all of these small pots of funding and donations actually enabled me to run the pilot recovery program, which when I was researching all of these recovery programs for other forms of addictions or other forms of abuse, like I said about the cults over in America, I then started realizing that there needs to be an actual structured but also holistic approach to how we help women recover from domestic abuse. And of course, I was on my own recovery journey too. I remember in 2023, I got up on stage in Manchester United Stadium, right, in front of like 300 people. And it was at an event, a public speaking event, and I was one of the keynote speakers. And part of my talk was going to be that I was creating this structured program, this specialist structured program for survivors. And when it actually came to getting on stage and talking about it, and I was on stage, I completely forgot to mention that I was doing that. Like it just slipped my mind. And I remember getting off stage and I just burst into tears because it hit me. I was like, oh my God, I forgot to talk about it. How did I forget to talk about it? Oh my God. And I mean, in hindsight, I know why, but at the time it spiraled me. And I was crying for months and months and months. Like I felt like I'd let myself down, but more so I felt like I'd let the women in the community down. Like I created this community and I nurtured it on a daily basis. I was supposed to get up on stage and tell the world that I was creating this specialist structured program for us. And I got on stage and my body just forgot. And so I spent a really long time like just feeling really disappointed in myself for doing so. I know now in hindsight, it really was, you know, like how we talk about the body keeps the score. Yeah. In that moment when I got up on stage in front of all those people, my body knew I wasn't ready. My body knew that I was nowhere near enough in my own recovery to be able to hold such sacred space for other survivors that I needed to hold that space for myself first. And so after months and months and months of crying, I finally took myself back to therapy, right, kicking and screaming, like literally, I shit you not. And I was going to therapy and it just wasn't working. And I'm a really big advocate for therapy. I love that. I'm actually starting my studies to become a therapist myself. Oh, really? Like I believe in therapy that much. Like, I think everybody should go to therapy. Like, I'm such a big advocate for it. But what I found was, whilst it had been working for me up until then, it was no longer enough on its own anymore. It was just not sustainable anymore. And I was just desperate to maybe find something else, like what else was going to help me. I wasn't going to give up therapy, that was for sure, but I just knew I needed more, like a bit of a larger toolkit. So I turned to understanding the brain and body connection. And it was like as if all of a sudden this light bulb just switched on my head and my nervous system started to regulate itself. And that had never happened to me before in my life. And I realized that this formula of nervous system work and understanding the connection between my brain and my body and my nervous system, and also going to therapy, but having real trauma-centered therapy and being in true community with other survivors, it became this formula that was actually working. And I was like, here it is. This is what I've been trying to make happen for such a long time, but I needed to make it happen for myself first. And my recovery shifted completely. It shifted, like I was grounded a lot more clearer. And so I turned back to my work again. And off the back of you sharing your story about the Purple Disco, I got this really small pot of funding, and you donated that the donations from the proceeds of the Purple Disco. And I was like, right, now I can pilot the recovery program. So me and the other women in the survivor community would get together online, and we would do a structured program.
Yeah.
We would do life skill workshops. We'd do group therapy. We would talk about how...
Is that the one you've been holding in London for the last couple of years?
Yeah. So we would do all of this on a weekly basis.
And it's free to survivors, isn't it?
So this pilot one was, so we'll get there. I mean, it's really important actually to understand the lack of access and how finance is a huge barrier for survivors in recovery. So we did this, and then in when I say like just the structure program alone, the sessions online were just incredible. The bond that we built as survivors in those sessions, it's not replicable anywhere else. And, we were away from all this judgment of the outside world, away from how people like to shame us and victim blame us. And we could just be. So even not just the structured sessions, but there were so many weeks where we just were ourselves, and we could have these open discussions and allow ourselves to feel, because we didn't feel judged by anyone else. We understood ourselves.
Yeah.
And, I'd bring in practitioners to deliver work that I'm not qualified to do. And some of the work I didn't want to do myself, even though I'm qualified, because I was a guinea pig in my own program.
Yeah.
I was literally a guinea pig in my own pilot. Do you know what I mean? So the weeks actually that we just spent just talking and feeling are probably one of my favorites, because I'd never had that sense of true community before, of understanding. And then in May this year, so started that in September last year. In May this year, as part, thanks to the funding and donations, I was able to take the women on a retreat.
Aww.
And I hired in a nervous system specialist who understood our complex needs. And the practitioner came along with us on the weekend, and like months and months of me and her discussing back and forth, what's going to work, what's not going to work, really having this real understanding of where these complexities were coming from and how our nervous system is affected in recovery by our traumatic experiences of domestic abuse. And on the weekend, the practitioner delivered just the work she delivered, Jo McMeegan, her name is, the work she delivered to us as a group, it was life-changing, transformational. There is like pictures, you'll have to go onto my Instagram to see them, but there's pictures of us in the group just in floods of tears.
Yeah.
And even now, I remember it, I want to cry.
Yeah.
Because like that's how deep the work was.
The work that people do with the nervous system. Like I have studied the nervous system in courses that I've done, but it is the most fascinating thing. Like I've done courses in NLP and EFT, meditation, loads of different things. And they were all part of my own recovery. You know, you're not going to fucking get it from nowhere else. Teach yourself. So I just taught myself, and I've spent so much money on my own self-development in my 6.5 years of recovery. Is it money well spent? It's worth its weight in gold. You will never spend any better money. It's an investment in yourself. That's the thing.
You
only get one of you.
Yeah, because it's not money pissed up the wall.
Exactly.
It's an investment you make in yourself.
For the rest of your life.
I've seen it. I lived the program. I was there on the weekend. The other women, I wish I could get them here in the room with me to share their experiences. It was...
Maybe we should.
Maybe we should.
We'll get them on.
It was transformational.
Yeah, like life-changing.
Life-changing, because it wasn't just about doing the work that weekend. It's also changed the way we navigate our lives after.
Moving forward.
Yeah, moving forward.
Gives you your own,
I get goosebumps even now thinking about it.
Your own tools in your own toolkit to go away.
You go away with a toolbox,
using without having that guidance. But out of everything I studied in my own recovery, learning about the nervous system, for me, it's that fascinating that you almost don't believe it's real.
Yeah.
And you're like, why are you not being taught this in school?
Exactly.
Why are you not being taught this in secondary school? Why is this not one of like the key subjects for GCSE? Why are you learning history and geography when you want nothing to do with that? Why are you not learning how to regulate your own nervous system?
Absolutely.
Because it will, what's the word I'm looking for? There won't be as many people.
Well, it keeps the cycles going, doesn't it?
Yeah,
it keeps the cycles going. Society quite literally depends on these cycles of abuse and violence, of addiction to continue. Because otherwise, what are the people at the top going to do?
Exactly.
But without us getting our tinfoil hats on. Yeah. Because again, I feel like that would be a whole episode on itself, right? Yeah. And you're 100% right. And, like we can sit here and use again the buzzwords like somatic healing. But at the end of the day, it's not even just about it being EFT. It's not about it just being breath work. It's about having that understanding of how the nervous system works.
Because all of them rely on the nervous system.
For survivors of domestic abuse, how does the nervous system work for them? It has to be specialist work. Yeah. The same way that if you're going to work with survivors of trafficking, of sexual violence, of child abuse, there has to be a specialist understanding of how the nervous system has now shaped itself.
Yeah.
Because I think, I mean, people have to go do their own research, but there's a lot of research online that's the nervous system does what it knows and it feels what it knows. If the nervous system doesn't know happiness, it's never going to feel happy.
Yeah.
It feels safe in chaos because that's all it knows. So we're constantly out here saying, oh, I just want to be happy. I'm chasing happiness. Your nervous system have got a fucking clue what happiness is. It's constantly going to chase trauma, chaos. Yeah, because that's where it feels safe, even though it's not safe. So there has to be this specialist understanding of how this work helps recover for survivors of domestic abuse.
Yeah, definitely. So with you, I remember you saying a bit earlier on that you are coming away completely from what you're doing now. Where are you heading? Where are you going? I'm very excited to hear.
I'm equal parts shitting myself and also so excited for what's coming next, because 6 weeks ago, I actually had to take sick leave. So you asked me, how has this work affected me working frontline? Well, I ended up so stressed and anxious that I went to the doctor and was like, I can't go back to work right now. Like, I'm that stressed and anxious. I couldn't continue fighting against the system.
Yeah.
And there's so many different power imbalances when you're doing this work with victims. And it was just re-traumatizing for me. Even as an IDVA, what I found was the role was disempowering me, because no matter how skilled, and I'm a skilled IDVA, like I'm a fucking good IDVA, I'll toot my own horn at that. But no matter how skilled you are as a practitioner, you're still at the mercy of the perp.
Yeah.
Because you're trying to help the victim survivor, and that's still dependent on how much control and power the perpetrator has in her life. I've supported women where even if they have the support of social services, of CAFCAS, or family courts, I've supported women where the family court judge will be the only one to preside over the case because they know the case so well and they can see that they're a perpetrator, and he will still continue perpetrating. There's nothing to stop this man from perpetrating. And for me, it just became really disempowering in my own recovery, and I couldn't keep putting myself in the cycle. So I signed myself off sick for a whole month off work. And the Leila I was at the beginning of October going into the sick leave is not the Leila I am today, like at all. I knew I couldn't come back and continue in this role in the way that I was. Something had to shift, something had to give. And I just decided, I was like, fuck it. I'm just going to go all in. I'm going to give up frontline work. It's not serving me in the way that it needs to, even though I am serving the women who really need the support. This is no longer healthy for me. I have to, and I advocate for any woman in their recovery to be doing this. Your recovery is paramount and it's priority. You cannot go out there trying to fight the world and save other women if you do not put yourself first. You become a savior, and practicing from savior mode is not safe. It's not safe for you first and foremost, and it's not safe for the community that you're serving. And I had to accept that. And it was really difficult. And I've been on that journey for the last 6 months, I'd say. And it's only been the last 2 months where I'm like, this is no longer for me anymore. I have to quit, and I have to focus on my own stuff. But with delivering the pilot recovery program, at the end of the weekend, after just watching this incredible transformation happen in front of my eyes, I looked at, have we still got time? Sorry, I feel like we're just chatting. After watching this incredible transformation in front of my own eyes, I just remember looking at the, she's a really good friend of mine, the practitioner who we were delivering the whole retreat together. And I was like, I think we can do this, you know? Like we're onto something. Like, you know, it was just like everything fell into place at the end of that weekend. I was just so much clearer. Like it was incredible, this transformation I had. And I was like, this is it. And it wasn't that I was, you know, when you have that huge rush of dopamine, it wasn't that. It was just,
do another one? I need a little transformation.
We'll get there. It was this huge moment of clarity and peace that this was it. This was it for me as a practitioner. This was it for the future of my work. That recovery work is desperately needed. And this is what it's going to take for women to recover from domestic abuse. And so I got to work immediately. And the program was there essentially because the content's all in my head. We bring in the practitioners that are qualified to do the work that I'm not as well. And we've put the whole recovery program together now. And we officially launched the recovery program 2 weeks ago. I'm not sure when this is going to go out, but on the 30th of October, I launched the recovery program. The recovery program is called the Survivor Circle. Still get emotional now. I know. So our recovery program is called the Survivor Circle, Learning to Live with Freedom, because essentially all of this goes back to how we as survivors are constantly trying to adapt with our nervous system and how we're going to do that living in freedom. And that's needs specialist recovery work in order to be able to do so. So we launched that 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And how's that coming along?
Well, the response we've had has been incredible, amazing. And, it's hugely impactful work. Everybody knows that. But the reality is there's no funding in the sector. Yeah. The charity sector and the VOG sector is monopolized by the big charities. I have applied I've lost count how many funding applications now, and every single one of them has been a no. They do not understand the impact of recovery work and how it has it's not just about the women, it's about their families, it's about the wider community, it's about the workplace, it's about just society, the incredible positive impact it has. And so at the moment, we don't have any funding to run another community program. We have launched it, and this is where it comes in because I've had to make a really difficult decision because in order to get there, I've had to do the program in a way where actually now this is accessible to women who can afford to come onto the program. And it goes against a lot of what I believe about community work because this should be easily accessible regardless of a woman's finances. And one of my biggest jobs going forward now is to find a way to be able to deliver this work for the community. There has to be a way. I believe in it so much, and I do believe that I can make it work. It will. But my biggest job right now is to show people the transformation and that this is life-changing work for women, and it has a huge impactful knock-on effect on everybody within their own ecosystem. And women deserve it. Recovery is not a luxury for anybody, whether it's addiction, whether it's domestic abuse, whether it's sexual violence.
It's savage.
Recovery is not a luxury. It's an essential. How you recover from all of these traumatic lived experiences in your life is life-saving work. That's how we then prevent addiction when it comes to alcohol, when it comes to drugs, when it comes to gambling,
if the right work is done in the first place.
Absolutely. And then we stop people from overdosing in recovery. We stop people from going into liver cirrhosis. We stop people from getting cancer in their liver. We stop this whole all these health issues that then cause people to die as a result, but also all of the people that complete suicide. It's life-saving work. It's not a luxury. It's an essential.
If you could give one message to any woman listening to this now who is going through any sort of domestic abuse at the minute, if you could just give one little paragraph to them.
I hate you. Now I'm going to cry.
from your lived experience and from the work that you've done, what would be the one thing that you would say, the most powerful message that you could give them?
That they're not alone. That no matter what, I see them. And even now, 6 years after leaving, I still remember what that feels like. With all the recovery work that I've done as well, I just want them to know that they're not alone. And all the work that I've done so far, all of my life's work is dedicated to them. It's dedicated to those of us who made it to the other side. It's dedicated to the women who are yet to be free. So the women who are listening right now that haven't found a way to leave yet and to flee. But mostly it's dedicated to the women who never made it out alive.
Oh, you've got me at that.
And I feel like as a survivor, I owe it to those women to go full throttle with this so that they know when they do come out of the other side, they're never going to be alone, and that the work is here, available and accessible to them. I will be working night and day to make sure that this happens.
Oh, if I could hug you over the table, I would. Thank
Bitch.
you. Thank you.
Cry at the end.
Thank you so much, Leila, for coming on and speaking to me today. Where can people find you? Where can people find your work?
Yeah, so I'm all over social media. You can't miss me.
I will leave links to all of your. So, do you use Facebook at all?
I don't. Do you know what? I don't. That's the one thing that is like my biggest downfall. I don't use Facebook, but on Instagram, I'm YouTube, TikTok. You can find my work across all of those platforms. Is your main platform
Instagram?
Yes, Instagram. Yeah.
I will leave links to everything, even your Facebook as well, in the show notes. So anybody wanting to be a part of the work that Leila does, or just want to follow her amazing account, I will leave links to your Insta, TikTok, YouTube, and your Facebook.
Yeah.
In the show notes as well. But again, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, and thank you to everyone for listening.